Hey guys, Tarekis here. It's a bit late, but finally finished the 3.26 version of my flickerstrike Trickster. We're going to talk about it in this video. It will be split into sections that will make it easier to navigate when they're on screen. I will upload a showcase separately later if you want to know what the build performs like, and there's also some of it running in the background. For those who already know how good the build performs, we can just continue to the section line out. We're going to start with just the updates for existing players from 3.25 and before that already know the gist of it and just need the things that have been updated. Then we're going to go into the full on-length build guide. We're going to go and see what mercenary and gear and setup you're going to use with the mercenary and your own character, what the passive skill tree looks like, the active skills you're going to use, and the gear you're going to wear. We're going to finish off with a bit of details about the loadouts and variants that are present in the PoE I'm going to share with you, and a quick note on that. There used to be in 3.25 and before an Uber tank variant. I have not updated that yet, I haven't got the time, and I will probably address this in a build update later in the league. PoE and link to the showcase once it's uploaded are going to be in the description. All right, we're going to jump in right here. For updates since 3.25, we're just going to go look at the things that have changed and not anything else. We're going to use the high-end variant because it's the most relevant for this. There are mostly changes because of the mercenary you're going to use. We're going to go over this exactly a bit later after the update. I'm going to explain every single item. The gist of it is that we're using Doriani's now, and we're using Perkelstow now. Perkelstow allows us to go off Voice of the Storm on our amulet, and Doriani's is just a huge damage boost. On the tree, we are then obviously dropping the mastery for elemental because it is no longer needed. We can also save a bit on these dexterity tattoos because we are going to use Warrior's Legacy, which has 30% stun avoidance, so you only need 70% either on tree or a darkness in front. We are also changing the tree a bit. Mostly it's the same, but I have currently chosen Marked for Death and the Runegraft to be down here. In previous versions and in the last video it used to be up here, which we are replacing with Maximum Effective Shock because we are going to be running Smite on the Mercenary. With the remaining point we save from the Elemental Wheel, we are going to take the last node in the second cluster, and that's pretty much updates on the tree. All that's left is items. As I've mentioned, we can replace some items. We no longer need Voices of the Storm. We are instead going to go Replica Dragon, which is going to call it Replica Dragonfangs. And we're using this because this is a pretty good unused damage increase layer, because the higher the skill is on an attack gem, the attack damage efficiency increases from, in this example, like 420 to 480% of the base. The second thing this does really is we can have reservation efficiency. We no longer need reservation efficiency on the helmet. That means you can either get lightning penetration, which still works even if you have kept Doriani's, or you can, let me just find it, you can go to the helmet and you can instead get an Eater of Worlds for Chaos, Fizz as Chaos. This replaces the lightning penetration, and you lose some DPS and you gain a lot of Fizz max. Kind of your preference. Do you want to be a bit more tanky to Fizz hits, or do you want to deal more damage? Also, there is no longer the need to go exposure on your gloves, because exposure no longer functions, because Doriani's already has this covered. There's nothing really good here to replace it with, so I just went spell suppress, so we are a tiny bit tankier. You can use anything you would like to. If I find something else, I will do it in a build-up gate, but this is kind of a useless slot now. We are also now using Warrior's Legacy. Warrior's Legacy mostly doubles your damage with the last line. It's not exactly that, but it's hard to configure. It's hard to actually determine how often this hits, but most of the time you just double your damage because you hit where you last hit. If you have a boss that's stationary, this is essentially double damage at the cost of 20% less attack speed. That's also why the config in 3.26 looks super strange. Full DPS has 2 flicker strikes in there. That is because of Warrior's Legacy, if you wondered. The last change we have really is we are losing Vessel of Windcar. Vessel of Windcar is no longer needed. Instead, we're going to go down to this here for some freeze, shock, and ignite chance. Really, the only thing we need here is the shock chance. And combined with the smite buff we get from the mercenary, we have like 60% chance to shock, which you can top up to 100% if you also run Galvanic Field. Galvanic Field isn't all that required, but it's nice if you want it. You can also use this. It's a flex slot. You don't necessarily need it. That's all for updates. So if you have already played this before, that's kind of all the info you need. Everything else is the same in as in 3.25. If you want more info, we're going to dive into the full build guide now. Alright, we're actually going to go back to mid-game as it's most realistic. If you are building this for the first time and you don't have like a huge amount of currency to pump into the build. So this is for you gear, and we said we start off with the 3.26 exclusive, or at least we think it's going to be exclusive. I do not think mercs are going to go core because they're just way too overpowered, and if they do go core, they will get nerfed pretty much. Okay, we're gonna go over the most important things first, and that is Dorianis. Dorianis on your mercenary, by now it's kind of a known thing. Dorianis always used to be a very good damage boost, but I pretty much hated it because you were just immediately dead to any lightning dot, and that kind of felt bad on a tank build. We can run it on the mercenary though. If the mercenary dies for some reason, he just dies. It's okay. He almost never does. I haven't had my guy die in quite a long time, but you know, if he dies, it's not important. Combined with the Dorianis, you're gonna need reflected rings. And you're gonna need at least 110 lightning res on each ring, or like I think 105 is kind of the breakpoint. Because you need to have at least minus 200%. That is the cap where you can go. And you could go like minus 300. It doesn't change. It just caps at minus 200. But if you happen to somehow get lightning res from somewhere, it's kind of better to overcap, even if it's negative resistance. You will also see this is called Reflection Immune Dorianis. That is because I have put it on here with Reflection Immunity. You can get this from an Essence of Insanity, I think. It's an Essence mod anyhow, so you can self-craft this ring, albeit it's going to be super expensive. This ring is just duplicative Calanda's Touch, and if you do not want to, or if you cannot get the reflection immunity, you can either choose to never run the reflection modifier, but if you do want to run the reflection modifier, you can. If you do not want to make this ring, you can go Alberon's Warpath and Replica Alberons. That means you cannot deal, or your mercenary cannot deal non-chaos damage. That means that your mercenary essentially does no damage at all, and he's just there to buff you. What that would mean is this is also like 15 div at the time of making this video, so it's not a cheap version or a cheap fix either. And you would lose your boot slot where you could get like a lot more chaos res than you could get from Replica Alberons. You can get up to 19 here, but this is obviously better. So if you get that Doriani's ring in this version, you can get a rare boots. What you can also get on the Yanis is not just positive things, but you will have some negative mods on there. And one positive mod to look out for, but that I didn't configure here because it's super expensive to get free reflected mods, is, I think it's a suffix and it's recouped. It's damage taken recouped as life, and that goes up to 15, so you can up to 30% damage recouped as life here. We're going to cancel the change because this is a hard-coded ring essentially. That's the Doyani setup. You're also going to want Perkle's Toe. Some people, instead of Perkle's Toe, used Defiance of Destiny here, but then you would need to change your source of lucky damage. You can either go back to Voice of the Storm, or you can run a Spectre. There is one perfect Spectre from Ritual that gives you lightning damage, is lucky. But if the Spectre dies, you need to rebuy it and resummon it, and I'm not about to kind of set up a whole minion thing here. If you want to, there is one. Don't know the name by heart, but you'll find it in the wiki. Or you can come on the stream and ask. That is the source of lucky now, and you also want to do influence in here for increased aura effectiveness. We're going to be using smite, and that's going to increase our shock and our base lightning attack damage we get from our mercenary. For the belt, we're going to use KM's Binding. KM's Binding is to essentially convert 25% of enemy fist to fire. That's a super good conversion mod, and it works a bit different, but it's in the configuration for your character, because this doesn't kind of carry over. We also have the rares. They're pretty easy. The Giant Slayer helmet, or like the helmet, Giant Slayer would be the best base, because armor actually matters. This has implicits. On the others, the implicits don't matter a lot. This also has increased armor from equipped helmet and gloves. That also is nice, but the others are just kind of pointless. There's nothing that you really want, so just throw on anything if you want to. Here you actually do want to recoup as life though. You either get physical or you get lightning. Physical is my choice. And you want the reduced life regen rate on the helmet as well. That means enemies will have a very low regen rate when they are hit by your mercenary. For explicits, it's super standard. You can see already here, it's just resistance and armor. You can also get life on there, but resistance and armor is all you want. The armor is relevant because of the lightning damage being supported by armor from Doryanis. For weapons, we have Dark Seer. The Dark Seer is giving you malediction on enemies. Malediction means 10% increased damage taken. That's a super good damage buff. And for your shield, you can go Centauris. That's what I chose in the config. This is nice because you can get punishment on the enemy when the guy blocks an attack. And it's not limited by the curse limit. You could also do something like, I've considered this, but I haven't bought it yet, so I don't know how well this works. It should work a bit, but because this is a common thing people with Doryanis did, you could just give him another Aegis. So you and your mercenary both run Aegis. This would be an option. Otherwise, you can also just throw on a random shield on the guy. This is like the most, like the least important slot here. That's really all you need in a mercenary. This is in the skills here. The only skill that matters on your mercenary is Smite. You're going to get Smite, and that's going to give you like a 20% damage increase in about, on top of everything else, because it has a lot of added lightning damage, and it also grants you some shocks, so you will increase your damage with your shocks as well. That's it for your mercenary. So we're going to go to your actual own character now. For the tree, we're going to use the mid game and also take a quick detour to the starter loadout at the end. I'm going to go over like every single wheel we take and why we take it, and just give you an in-depth explanation as to why I've made the choices I've made for the guide. We're going to start off with the sentences. Polymath is just there for damage. This enables us to get a lot of the masteries you might not have gotten otherwise, because it just kind of justifies getting a lot of masteries. It also is a recovery layer because you get like 10 to 15% depending on how much masteries you currently have when you kill an enemy, which is super huge. Next we have Swift Killer, that is +2 to frenzy charges, obvious super high damage buff for a flickerstrike build. And we also have charge duration increase, which isn't all that necessary for frenzy charges, but it's super nice for the endurance charges you're going to run. That means you can get a super slow endurance charge generation, and because they like have a super high duration, they just don't run out, and you're always at maximum endurance charges as well. Escape Artist was nerfed this league. It's still worth taking, and it's also needed because we need to go to Soul Drinker, and the other options aren't really super nice. You could theoretically get Heartstopper and one step ahead, and instead get Soul Drinker on a Forbidden set. It's not super nice to get because it's still like quite a lot of energy shield. It's 1200 energy shield here that you would lose in this config. That's 10% or more than 10% of your entire hit pool. So we're still using this. And Soul Drinker is also needed. That's why we need to go Escape Artist first. Soul Drinker is like a super important enabler with the last line. Energy Shield leech effects are not removed when Energy Shield is filled. That means you can overleech, and you don't need to start a new leech when you actually are already full energy shield. That means a lot of mods that are like while leeching always apply, because you are constantly leeching, like every single second in the game you're considered as leeching. That's it for sentences. So we are going to explain what we are doing with those wheels here. This here is just pathing essentially. This changes to more efficient pathing later on. The reason why we do this in the early game like this is because these are pretty strong, and you don't need to save points because you don't get to build a second cluster when you don't have the currency anyways. This is for energy shield, and energy shield as well, as is this mastery. We have evasion rating here, which we convert to armor later. Also very nice. For damage, we have this wheel. This is penetration. This works on top of Doriani's. So when you have 200 lightning or minus 200 lightning res, you can now penetrate to be considered at minus 208 lightning res with this. Works for all the penetration, so pretty nice to get. And in the mid-game config, I have chosen to put the Runegraft of the Fortress on here. We're moving the Runegraft later on, and it's super nice because it's 40% increased global defenses. Super strong mod. And we are going to lose some attributes. It's not that bad. You can fix it, and you gain like 10% of your entire energy shield again with this mod. Thing that's left up here is the keystones. CI is just a build enabler. We can ignore all the chaos res, and we can now just go on minus 60, never consider anything chaos, and go to life 1. Since we're stacking energy shield, we are pretty set on everything, considering a life pool. And we also go Ghost Reaver. Ghost Reaver we go because the last line, the downside, cannot recharge energy shield. We also have this on a ring we use in the gear, and when you run the ring, you run the Ghost Reaver, and when you drop the ring for some reason in your build, you will also want to drop the Ghost Reaver because it disables your recharge. This is only good because you already have the downside on another item as well. Down here we also see the Lethal Pride. The Lethal Pride comes in a different, in a lot of different variants. I've chosen some random variant that works. There are others that work, and I've prepared some of the searches for some of those lethal prides. If you want to search for them yourself, you can use this predefined link, and you can change what you actually search for. What's important here is intimidate. Intimidate is on here. This applies to the enemy, and it gives the enemy 10% increased damage taken. And you can also get double damage on those. 5% chance to deal double damage is quite a good damage buff. And you also can gain rage on hit. This one doesn't, but this 16 for 375 is essentially perfect. They cost currently like 80, 100 div, so don't chase this exact number. You can just gain rage on hit with this variant and a lot of other variants. The rage on hit on the lethal pride is super nice. I tell you, you don't need to spend other points on it. Then for the regular tree again, we have Frenzy Charge here, and we have Mark Mastery for Frenzy Charge generation, and also increased damage again. Increased damage is a super good damage mod. We gain actually quite a lot of it in this build. We prepare for a second cluster jewel, and we just throw in a normal jewel until you can get it. And Storm Shroud here, or actually just a jewel slot. We're going to talk about the jewels in the gear. Another Frenzy Charge. This wheel is here for some increased damage. We don't have a lot of increased damage on the tree. And we also gain in total 12% chance to block attack damage, which we will need to cap our spell block later on. And we also get an 8% chance to get Frenzy Charge when you hit a unique enemy in higher configs, when you can go Awakened Multi-Strike, probably even before that, if you feel like kind of gambling on not getting 100% uptime on your Frenzy Charges on bosses. You can drop this, but for starters and mid-game, I chose to put this in because it feels nice to have better Frenzy Charge generation on bosses. Down here, we have Leader of the Pack for our free auras. The free auras are going to be enabled by a pretty cheap level 3 Enlighten, and this is enabled by getting a Replicus Dragon's Flight. We're going to talk about it in gear. Previously we had to get Charisma, which no longer is needed. This is enough, 12%. We had 16 before. We also have Precise Technique here. Since we never deal Critical Strike from our sword, we also never deal critical strikes here. We don't invest anything in crit, and we just can get 40% more attack damage for free because our life is 1, and this is always on because of that. We have our block section over here. This is just all defensive here for the most part. We have the Frenzy Charge and the Frenzy Charge generation here. This makes you like always get full Frenzy Charges when you kill mob packs because you gain on kill. And the other things are block. This is just block. And this down here is also just block. This up here is some attack speed while you wear a shield. So we also take this because it's just 3 points. It's pretty efficient and a nice damage boost. And speaking of block, we also have Versatile Combatant that converts your overcapped regular attack block into spell block. In mid-game, we have a 47% in the config, and we cap this in the higher end ones up to 65, so you block most of the things that hit you. And Iron Reflexes for our recovery with Aegis. It converts all of our invasion rating into armor, and that is a good recovery layer, and it's a good defensive layer as well. I've mentioned Rage before. If you can't, and in this mid-game config I don't have one that has, if you don't have Rage on hit on your Lethal Pride, you will want to get it on here. Last thing in the mid-game is going to be the DPS cluster. This is just a cluster jewel. If you can afford it, at 96, it's probably something wrong. These aren't that expensive. They're like 1 div. So we get one in here. These are just for damage. You can, instead of martial prowess, get heavy hitter. These items and the variants of the clusters are in items, which you can check out in the PoE. And it's all just for damage. I've also just put in some random damage tools in here. They don't do much, they just give you damage. Most notably is Feed the Fury though. This has 15% increased attack speed, 15 is huge, and it is well leeching, so it's always on for us. Before we continue, we also go to starter, and you can already see this is anointed here, and in starter it is not. In starter we actually path over here because we don't have the currency to anoint this. This usually costs 2 div to anoint, so we just get it on the tree, and we can do the non-val strike skills target 1 additional enemy on this mastery, which we can do on gloves in higher configs. Another thing that is changed here is accuracy. The accuracy and the accuracy mastery you will need until you can afford an Emerald Edge with Resolute technique. And also we get the elemental mastery because at this point you probably don't have a Doriani setup yet. You drop this the second you get a Doriani setup, because at this point, if you have a Doriani's, it's configured in mid-game, it's going to be an actual damage loss. You can see this decreases your damage because it will make the enemy go from minus 200 to plus 200 res, which will kind of break those hits. Alright, that is the entire passive tree we just looked at, and we can continue with some active skills. We are going to need to look at our flickerstrike. This is obviously the most important. That is our main damage dealer. These are configured pre-tame at 2020. We have flickerstrike, we have multi-strike. Multi-strike is needed in all flickerstrike builds because it makes you do additional hits. You could theoretically run without this because there is some that actually give you more damage than multi-strike, but nobody runs flickerstrike without multi-strike. That is who's any amount of sane. You just run this. Energy leech for 2 more damage modifiers because you have both of them active, both of these conditions. You are always leeching because of the overleech, and you are most of the time you are full on energy shield because you are overleeching. You can swap this with damage and full life if you don't feel like gambling, or if you do content that kind of puts you at like not full energy shield constantly. You can instead run damage and full life. Volatility is for any lightning build or physical builds too, because you have more maximum attack damage. And since we do lucky means you roll twice, so it doesn't matter if you have a low minimum, you just need a high maximum, and you roll the entire roll range twice with lucky. That is why volatility is super strong on here. It's actually the strongest of all of them, percentage-wise. Close combat as well, it's a good 39% more melee damage, and one of the higher, more modifiers. This is active all the time because Flicker is at range 0. We also get elemental damage. As I've mentioned, 39 is high, 34 is what elemental damage of attacks gives you. And you can, at later points, get the awakened variants of both of those. Some people have asked, why is there a double strike of momentum? This is in here not because it's part of the actual link. This would be a 7 link and it's impossible. This is just here and disabled because you can use double strike of momentum or even double strike baseline on your Maven fights or any other fights that you can't afford to flicker. Thinking serious, for example, maybe you don't want to flicker around and you just want to stay stationary and have more control of your character. So this is just for bosses. We have Leap Slam and Frenzy, both linked with faster attacks. Leap Slam is just for moving. Frenzy of Onslaught is for generating frenzy charges. You need this only when you go in cold, so you have like 0 spendable frenzy charges. And you go in against the boss, you will want to use Frenzy of Onslaught a bit before you actually start flickering. There's another fix that you can do, which is you can get a shield in your weapon swap that has +2 minimum frenzy charges. And that way, when you weapon swap and you weapon swap back, you now have +2 spendable frenzy charges. This is also Frenzy of Onslaught, which is super strange because when you actually use the Frenzy of Onslaught while you have maximum frenzy charges, they're all consumed. You don't want to do this ever, but the base frenzy no longer works with strikes or any melee weapon. Frenzy only works with bow now, so you use Frenzy of Onslaught. Next, we have auras. Auras, as mentioned, we need an Enlighten level 3. These are pretty cheap because they're considered bricked. And we run Discipline. Discipline just for energyshield. Wrath, we run for damage. There's a setup that makes your mercenary run Wrath. In this scenario, you will want to use something like Determination or Haste or anything else you fancy if you feel adventurous. But I have chosen to keep Wrath because Smite is just better, in my opinion, on your mercenary, because while you can self-run Smite, it's super annoying to constantly monitor if it's up, so I chose not to do it. Grace is also super important because it gives you a lot of not just a base evasion rating, but also more evasion rating. This is converted to armor, and it's a vital part of our recovery and reduction layers. Warlord's Mark is the tiny endurance charge generator I mentioned before. You just run Warlord's Mark for 2 reasons. One is that you gain endurance charges, and 2 is that an enemy is always marked by Mark the Prey. Mark on hit, so this always is when you hit a unique or rare enemy. We also have an auto cast setup. The auto cast setup is cast when damage taken, so it triggers after a certain amount of damage, with Sigil of Power being the most important here, because Sigil of Power gives you 15% less damage on the enemy at maximum stages, and Molten Shell is also a good box standard increase to your EHP and also your armor. Frost Shield works a bit weird, but it's also an EHP increase if you get it. Some people like to throw out Frost Shield because it's a bit mana intense if all of these trigger at the same time, and it might end your current tincture you have up. So if you want to drop one of those, drop Frost Shield. Sigil of Power and Molten Shell are super good. This one you will want with quality. Everything else doesn't matter. You have these at these very specific levels because they have to work together with cast when damage taken. And Sigil of Power has to stay very low because at higher levels, it has a higher requirement of mana spent. So if you were to put this to 20, you need to spend 400 mana per stage. At level 3, you only need to spend 90 mana per stage. So between the time you put down your Sigil of Power and you gain your max stages, you need to spend not just 4 times 90, you need to spend 4 times 400 mana, which is not very realistic, and you will not get the less damage bonus. That's why this is super low, if in case you are wondering. And now we are at like a flex slot. We don't really need anything on the gloves. So we have Frostblink and Portal. You can throw that out and do whatever else you want. They're fill slots. Frostblink I choose because it's super nice to do on bosses. So if you see something you can actually not tank and you need to get out, use Frostblink instead of Leap Slam, because the way Frostblink works, you are considered out of that area immediately, while Leap Slam you're considered inside the area you are leaping from while the animation is going, and this just saves you from certain death in case you stand in something that would immediately kill you. I also oftentimes put a portal in there because, well, we have the slot, why not? Then we have just remaining the cooldowns. You don't usually use them. You only use them when they are up together. And Berserk, you can go up to level 20 if you want, but you will have to meet the strength requirements. This is kind of iffy. It depends on if you can gain a lot of strength for free. You just increase this. This is just at a random level because of the strength requirement. It is better the higher you go. You pull this when you have maximum rage, and preferably when also Val Haste is up. So if your Val Haste is about to go up soon, you will want to wait with your Berserk. The Val Haste works on souls, while this works on rage, and we cannot enable haste because we don't have the mana, but we enable Val Haste, and it's just a super good cooldown for increased attack speed. Mercenary isn't on you. We've been over Smite, and that's it for your active skills. That's all you're going to use. Mainly you're going to just hold down Flicker and then also Leap Slam a few times. So super easy, mostly one button build from the skill zone. All right, next we go and look at the items. For items, we're just going to go over every single one we have configured. And we are going to start with the passive tree because we've started with that in the tree section already. We have a Corrupted Blood jewel that's slightly different than the mid-game DPS jewel. You should be able to get Corrupted Blood on one of your jewels while you have the jewel slots. And that's just to get Corrupted Blood immunity. Super nice to have. It's super annoying if you don't. These mid-game DPS jewels are just a tame variant of the high-end DPS jewel you have in the high-end version. These just have maximum lightning, or just maximum energy shield and added lightning damage and attack speed. You can also get some other esoteric things, but these are the 4 mods you will be chasing on the DPS jewels. For uniques, we have Watcher's Eye. You can get a lightning pen 1 mod. These are kind of affordable. When you get a 2 mod, it's going to be expensive when you get also increased lightning damage while affected by Wrath. You also want the Leaf of Pride, we've talked about this in detail, and a Storm Shroud. So when you have shock immunity from shock avoidance, you also have avoidance for all elemental ailments. So that was it for the things that are on the passive tree. On your character, we're going to start with the Federal's Edge. This has Resolute Technique. This is the core item. This enables the entire build because attacks with this weapon have added maximum lightning damage equal to up to 15 of your maximum energy shield. And that goes from 10 to 15%. It's kind of important that you get 15% or at very, very least 14%. That is extremely important. This used to be 20% flat and they have nerfed it to 15 maximum. The increased energy shield, maximum energy shield, which is 45 on this item, isn't that important. You will really want to have the other roll range high. And the Resolute Technique is for always hitting without accuracy. When you cannot afford it, you can just run it with accuracy, but especially when you do higher content, you will want those 4 passive points you kind of waste on accuracy, and you will also want to hit even if you don't have accuracy from being blinded and monsters being evasive and whatnot. You just don't need to worry about accuracy. Aegis Aurora is also super important for your recovery. This gives you recover energy shield equal to 2% of your armor when you block. Since we have a lot of armor, we recover a lot of energy shield when we block. It's about, if I remember correctly, like 15% of your energy shield when you block, and you block most of your attacks with later on 65% capped on both of them. I don't think PoE calculates this, but you can do the math yourself if you fancy knowing the exact values. That's really what Aegis does. We have a lot of rare gear here too. These are just for energy shield. We go about them in detail, but we're gonna do the easy uniques first. Replica Dragon Fangs, that's what I've talked about before. Anoint is Trouble Fury, and we will want +3 levels to all flickerstrike gems. This is good because that's a kind of a hidden damage multiplier. It goes from, I think it would be in this scenario, it would be 400% of base damage, and it goes to 460% of your base damage. So pretty good hidden damage multiplier layer. And you also get increased reservation efficiencies of skills. That means you have a lot of freedom on what you do on your tree with your reservation efficiency. We can save a few points with that. And we can also, on higher versions of the build, we can drop what we previously had of high-end helmets here. We had increased reservation efficiency. We no longer need that implicit, and we can just drop it. So we have gained another mod by that. There's other options for this slot, but personally, this is what I've concluded is the best. There's other options that are valid. This is what I'm recommending here. On your ring, specifically the left slot of the ring, you have a short bronze revelation for 300 energy shield. And this also has the downside that you cannot recharge or regenerate energy shield. That is the downside I talked about before. And it's just a big hefty 300, actually 330 if you fix the implicit, 330 flat energy shield. That's more than your boots and your gloves for most scenarios. On your second ring, you want Warrior's Legacy. This is a super nice item. It looks a bit weird because it has 20% less attack speed, and it looks like you would gain damage from just removing it from your character. That is because it's kind of weird to configure in PoE, because strike skills also target the previous location they were used, was fixed. It was updated in 3.26, and it now works with flicker. Most of the time, if the boss isn't stationary and moves around a lot, it isn't really active. And for all other scenarios where you have a stationary boss, it's mostly just you double your damage because you hit twice. That's why we have this super weird config of having full DPS, and that full DPS contains 2 times flicker strike. The 2 times flicker strike is from the Warrior's Legacy, so this looks kind of bait, but it is because of that. It's super strange to configure. That's what I've chosen to do. That's why this is here. Last unique is Darkness Enthroned. There's nothing easier to explain than this. This is just 2 abyss sockets, and they are doubled in efficiency. Specifically, this is very nice because you can get a chance to avoid being shocked, on your jewel you put in here. That means you can get your entire shock avoidance from one single jewel slot, and with the Storm Shroud, you just apply this to all elemental ailments. And the other thing is these Mirror's Eye jewels, they do a lot of your damage, and you can like double them by putting them in your Darkness Enthroned. So Darkness Enthroned isn't there, it's just there for a lot of damage really. Now let's talk about these rares. I have some crafting guides, and I have a crafting guide from 3.25 on my YouTube as well. This is still relevant. It still works the same. There's a few things that have changed with like Chi gear crafting. You will find something on the new orbs on other channels. Maybe I will do Chi crafting guide later, but for now you can use the 3.25 one, and there's also notes in the PoB notes on how to craft stuff. Main thing with all of these slots is that they need to have a lot of energy shield, and in the case of body armor, a lot of energy shield and evasion rating. Other than that, they don't really do that much. They just have resistances, and the implicits also are important. That makes crafting them pretty easy because they're base items, and you can use Eldritch crafting to craft them, and you also utilize the Eldritch implicits. Here we have damage penetrates lightning res. You can also choose, instead of that, you can choose, let me scroll up to that, mid-game, you can also choose an implicit from Eater of Worlds for damage taken as chaos. So you essentially ignore up to 8% if you were to actually go up there, 8% of your physical damage, because it's converted to chaos. Reduced mana cost of attacks is also super nice because it just makes you keep up your tincture. Then for body armor, kind of the same thing. You just want prefixes with a lot of defenses, so in theory, really easy item. And you just get some resistances as well. You can also get intelligence on there. You're going to need at least one intelligence mod on any of your rares, really. Doesn't matter where it is, otherwise you can just get the resistances, and in higher damage, in higher gear loadouts, you can swap out some of the mods for more rare and expensive things to get. For gloves, same thing. Again, energy shield and resistance, but what you also want to get is attack speed because it's super good on gloves. You can go cheap with a crafted attack speed, or you can do essence for 18% attack speed. For the implicit, it's super important that you get non-volatile strike skills target one additional nearby enemy. This essentially doubles your damage because you shotgun, which means you layer your damage from two sources onto one target. And you can get this up to target two additional nearby enemies, which triples your damage, and that triple damage only applies if there are actually 3 enemies. It doesn't work with a scenario where only one enemy is present. But so you know, this just makes you delete all the trash you ever find, all the trash bags. Lightning exposure on hit, applying 13 lightning resistance is relevant early when you don't have a minus 200% Doryanis. You will be at some point at minus 200% on your Doryani. At this point, the lightning exposure doesn't do anything, and you can swap it out for something like suppression. There's nothing really super good on this slot that you could swap out, but you can get a suppression or something instead of that. I've also forgotten about this. The melee hits have chance to fortify is also important. That enables you to get fortify, and increased non-curse aura of your skills just increases your damage and your defenses. And last, we have the boots. Again, as you could have probably imagined, we just gain a lot of energy shield here and some resistances. You can also get chance to avoid bleeding on both the implicit and the crafted suffix. It's kind of nice to get it. It's not required, but in some content you will feel when you get hit with a bleed once, you need to stand still, because if you leap slam away, you're dead. It's kind of a choice. Do you want that? Do you care about this? Does the content you plan to run with this build actually matter? If it does, I would recommend getting it. Otherwise, just doesn't matter. Another very important thing on here is the action speed. This is an insane thing for an implicit. We get 5% up to 6%, I think, action speed. And some people don't need this. Some people really like the quality of life of one step ahead. It really doesn't do anything for your DPS. It's just 2% action speed. But it makes you unable to be slowed. So if you want to be unable to be slowed, take one step ahead with a forbidden set later on. If you don't do that and you go with the opportunistic I have configured in here, you will want to gain or get the action speed on your boots. They don't layer, you choose one or the other. One thing you can also get on implicit instead of the avoid bleeding is to get chance to avoid elemental ailments. This way you could get a non 100% or a non 50% shock avoidance jewel. So you get, like, let's say 90% from your darkness and throne setup, and you get the remaining 10% off here, and you have it fixed. That's one pretty cheap way to fix it when you don't have the currency to get a 100% and get a 50%. That's already everything for gear. All that's left is flasks. We have a tincture. Tinctures are essentially just mandatory for elemental builds because we have penetration and increased elemental damage on this. Pretty bog standard. It's kind of known for elemental builds. You just want these mods, or you just want this one mod penetrates and increased effect. These are recharge or gain charge on block flasks. You can get this with up to 3 charges, which is what you want when you have the currency to get it. That doesn't mean they are up 100% like with Mage Blood, but it makes them stay up a lot. Like you have a super high uptime on these flasks. They are actually up all the time in trash scenarios, and they are actually also up a lot in boss scenarios, especially if the boss hits with lots of small projectiles instead of big slams. We have chance to shock on the suffix, so we self-shock with the with this and the smite from the mercenary. We have Impala and we have Armadillo for increased evasion and armor. Since we convert evasion, both of those work. Before conversion you get evasion, and after conversion you get armor, so both very good. And we also have a sulfur flask. I've chosen to go movement speed on here because that's the last useful modifier we can get. On higher variants, you will swap this to a bottled faith, because bottled faith applies another 10% increased damage taken on enemies. And before you can afford that, because that's pretty pricey, you get the regular magic variant of the flask. Speaking of loadouts, we are going to talk a bit about different things in loadouts now. We've seen Starter. Starter just has super easy gear to get. It's just like 5k as uniques and rares. So if you actually start this build from 0, you can go Starter. It still clears everything really. It's just super weak compared to the actual build. We've been through mid-game, and now we have high-end and min-max. High-end is just essentially stronger gear, and this is the same, but it has aura and AoE gems. Both applies to aura gems, and that's why you run your auras in your helmet, because you can get +4 to those. For body armor, this is kind of still the same, but you will want a better one. Actually, with all of those, preferably, I've just configured it in the necrotic armor quality of 26 or higher. You need to have these either drop, which is rare, or you can just buy those. You also get explicit defense modifiers, which you can do with a tailoring orb from Heist. And that also increases the energy shield and evasion here again. So we are close to 800 energy shield here, pretty good. And for suffixes, we again, just this one has full on only resistances. You could get intelligence on this one again. Gloves, this time we have 18% attack speed. I mentioned before we have the possibility to go for essences. This is an essence mod. This is one way to craft it, and the prefix on here is just increased energy shield. You can also go here on high-end. Minmax has a different one, and high-end gloves you could also go and add a benchcraft modifier for leech, so increased damage while leeching. You could this instead of the energy shield. So you would gain some DPS, but you would lose some energy shield. Depending on the type of mods you roll, you will want to use either. So depends on what you do when you craft your gear, or what you get when you craft your gear. As I've mentioned before, we also have spell suppressor here because there's nothing good left. But you can use this useless mod to just instead conflict up the non-wild strike to 2. It's kind of expensive, but it really is super nice for all trash mobs. Boots, again, same thing, just better. And here we again have a shock jewel plus corrupted blood, you will have kind of a problem to fit all of your jewels. This config actually would work because high-end, there's still a high-end DPS jewel you could swap with a corrupted blood jewel, but at some point you will have to kind of move the corrupted blood immunity to some expensive jewel. For example, Storm Shroud. People corrupt it because it's not super rare, and you can get a good corruption like penetrates, elemental resistance, or corrupted blood immunity. Storm Shrouds with corrupted blood immunity are kind of expensive, but it's also achievable. We've talked about Bottled Faith. What we also get in higher variants is Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh set. I personally love Opportunistic. Opportunistic is not just a DPS buff. It doesn't reflect here, but you have 25% more damage while you are at a boss that only has one enemy, and you take 20% reduced damage while you are in a trash scenario. So those 20% reduced damage taken are huge when you run like super loaded tier 17s, and you can when you pump this up even higher with energy shield, you can tank volatile cores and kind of that kind of stuff. This is what I've done in the Uber tank, which I haven't bothered to update yet, but those 20% are super huge. People like to go one step ahead instead. That is something you can do also on your Forbidden set. Really up to you. Do you want the damage? Do you want the defensive? Or do you want the quality of life? Another chase item that we get on here is the Light of Meaning. It's super expensive, but it gives you a lot of energy shield. There's like 1700 energy shield in this config. Because we get all of those that I've mentioned before, and when we have the skills to we actually get from level 100, we can get this Cloth and Chain cluster as well. It's super nice to fix a bit of your resistances, and it also gives you a lot of physical mitigation via armor. Also, this is on high end and min-max. We removed the Sword Mastery as explained before, and we get the second DPS cluster, or actually we swapped this one to a block cluster. There's a Strike Leader on here for 4% chance to block attack damage, and here we just have DPS. It's just full on DPS cluster. You can either use this one, which is the alternate DPS cluster, or Martial Prowess cluster. Depending on your current attack speed buffs and your current increased damage with attacks, it's better to use one or the other. It's not much of a difference, you can just use either really. We're also removing the Runegraft from up here to down to this mastery. This now has 50% to maximum shock. Because we self-shock, we can now shock over the regular 50% shock, up to 65% shock. And let me just show you what happens in the configuration. And it's kind of insane to configure this, but at some points, at some hits, you get lucky and you actually shock for 65%. This happens to your damage. We go from 176 million to 264. So enormous increase. That's why this is a potential huge DPS increase. And the thing I've just mentioned, this is where we move the Runegraft. We are going to get marked for death for Culling Strike. We can't really get Culling Strike on our Mercenary because he can't use the Axe base type. And I don't want to use another non-smite Mercenary. So I've chosen to go marked for death here. This is what I have currently. If I choose an experiment and use a different thing, you will know and find out in a build update. For now, this seems like a good choice. And for high end, it stays mostly the same on the tree, or actually it is exactly the same on the tree, and it's just more even better stuff. Here, for example, the 2 mod, Watcher's Eye, and the min-max gloves and the min-max boots. These are enabling you to actually get super strange and super esoteric setups with your jewel slots because you have a lot of jewel slots to spend. There is going to be Abyss on both the gloves and the boots. These are super hard, or not super hard, they're super expensive to craft. But it is very achievable if you have a lot of currency. I've crafted these last league, and I would craft them almost exactly the same. And these are crafted in the GG crafting with, if I remember correctly. And if they're not, there's a lot of guides on how to craft the Bisoccle gear, but do know it's extremely expensive to get this. On Minmax, I also have Wine of the Prophet. This doesn't do anything on the paper here, but it gives you a variety of super strong and super fun or cool mods. This is kind of like a Headhunter if it was a flask. So this is super nice to get. Just drop the shock here for the Wine of the Prophet. And you can use Galvanic Field if you want to increase your shock chance. If you're not happy with the shock chance you lose from no longer running this particular flask that we had before. Alright, that's that for the different variants. The only thing I have left that I want to talk about really quick is the configuration and some things that people have that has been confusing people. We have like a super strange rage amount, and we don't actually have that much rage, but PUB caps it at your max rage, and that means if you have a node that actually gives you plus max rage, it actually calculates as if you like had more rage now. That means you can actually see that plus max rage nodes actually give you more damage. We also have maimed. Maimed is only there so the calculation for heavy hitter works. Shocked, it's at 65 in this config. This is kind of cheating, but yeah, I can also put it to 40. It can't really be reflected on what's an average because we have such high roll ranges, but we can get up to 65, and with a minus 200% Doriani, we actually do get 65. We also have one big thing, which is the custom modifiers for mercenary, and also the minus 200% lightning resistance, which is set in enemy stats as mentioned here from Doriani's. Game's binding, Sparkle's toe as mentioned from the gear, Dark Seer as well, and Centauri's. And influence and generosity. One comes from the Anoint on the amulet, and generosity can spawn as a link in your mercenary that you take with you. That is another 20% increased aura effect that makes your smite pretty damn good. All right, that is everything I have to explain the build for you. It's been quite a long video, so I hope everything is clear. If you have questions, do join the Discord. The link is down below, or come and hop on stream. Link is also down below. To conclude, thank you for watching. Hope to see you next one. Cheers and goodbye.